to They Mostly Planet at Night. Mostly, I am Salem, joined by my co-host Graveyard.
Hello.
This is episode 55 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Mankind has always been afraid of the woods. We see it throughout history and folklore. What is it that makes us nervous wandering through the dark forest at night? What really lurks behind the trees? Is it an ancient evil? Or maybe just our lizard brains playing tricks on us? Join us as we make our bunks, dive into the brackish water, and put on our camp counselor shirts. This week we're going over 3 movies that take place mainly in the woods or the forest. The first being The Burning, the classic from, 81? 80?
81.
81. Yeah. Which kickstarted some famous people's careers there. Quite a few, actually.
Yep.
Then there's The Forest, which is newer.
2016.
Yeah, with Natalie Dormer. And then She Came from the Woods, which is brand new this year.
This year, yep.
Which is a Tubi original, which has to be, I think it's the first one I've ever seen of a Tubi original. I'm not a big fan of Tubi, but it is a Tubi original. And that one just came out this year. So we will start out with The Burning. Now this, we'll just get it out of the way. This movie started the career of Jason Alexander of Seinfeld fame.
Yep.
He really looks like he's like 35 years old.
Yeah,
even when he's young.
The same. Yeah.
I mean, he has hair. I mean, like, he doesn't look as old as he does in Seinfeld, but he literally just looks like George Costanza, like with a hairpiece.
Correct.
He looks and sounds exactly the same.
Which is funny because he's 22 here.
Yeah, right. Fisher Stevens is in this movie. He looks very, very young. I mean, he obviously looks like a little mini version of what he looks like later, which is funny. Which, as a kid, I always knew him from Short Circuit, which is funny because they don't play Short Circuit on TV anymore.
Nope.
And for a while, I was like, why don't they play Short Circuit on TV? Like, I loved that movie when I was a kid. And then I realized that, Fisher Stevens is essentially in brownface in that movie, playing an Indian, like a very stereotypical Indian, like, tech guy. And he is very much just a white dude. So,
also known as the bad guy in Hackers as well.
Yeah, Mr. the Plague.
Yes.
I guess that's why they don't play the movie anymore. And I haven't watched it since then. Like, I have no desire to, but I just thought it odd. And then I looked it up and was like, "Ooh, yeah, that's bad. Yeah, that is why they don't play that anymore." Also, Holly Hunter, Academy Award winning Holly Hunter, started this movie. She's, I mean, to be fair, like barely. She's there, but I don't even know if she has any speaking lines, honestly.
She's just the kid that looks 35 and smokes, right? I don't remember who she was in this.
Yeah, that's what I said. I had to look because I was like, none of these like characters seem like her, and that's because none of the actual like speaking, like kind of front facing characters is her. She's just kind of one of the background characters. If you watch, like, the scene where they're all sitting around the campfire, there's the one, they kind of cut to like a group of, like there's like a couple or little groups that they keep cutting back to.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the one girl, she's kind of like, she was the kind of beefier girl that was like playing softball earlier.
Yeah. And
there's like a smaller girl next to her, kind of like not really putting her head on her shoulder, but like close to her shoulder. That's Holly Hunter.
Okay. Yep.
So again, I don't even, like I said, I couldn't even I wasn't watching that closely, but I don't even think she has any real speaking lines. Like, I remember her being in a couple of scenes, but I mean, really, she doesn't. I mean, Jason Alexander talks, Fisher Stevens talks,
right?
But Holly Hunter really is just kind of there. But anyway, this is where her very first movie. And also, this was the Weinstein's first movie.
It's apparent now.
right. I was watching it like, this is definitely there. Harvey Weinstein apparently had the idea for the movie. He didn't write the screenplay. His brother Bob did with someone else, but Harvey Weinstein is credited with having like the original idea. He's like, the producer of this movie. And his, allegations do go all the way back to this movie. One of the women that did come forward had a story of when they were working on this movie, experiencing the same, pattern that he had, where he would invite a woman to his hotel room and then, answer the door and like naked or in a towel or whatever, which Weinstein is not like an attractive guy. I don't know why he think that would work anyway, but so it goes all the way back then. I guess it has to be said.
Yep.
But Bob Weinstein, I think, was more involved in this one, and he's still around.
Yes.
There was also like somebody who ended up being like a president or CEO of one of the big studios started out in this movie too.
Huh.
So anyway, but yeah, none of the like major characters are people that went forward. It's all like the sub characters are the famous people. Like Jason Alexander and Fisher Stevens are like second tier characters for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, so yeah, we'll get back to the actual movie. Oh, and the actual movie starts out with a bunch of kids at camp. Surprise, surprise. And they all kind of get together. I don't know what, there's like 6, 7 of them. And they're all like, we got to get the caretaker back. He's so mean. We don't like him. They don't give you any examples of what this guy did or why he's a jerk or anything like that. They all just say like, yeah, we're going to get him. Yeah. And so they have like, I got this thing in a box. It's really going to get him, so we're all going to, basically the plan is like one of us is going to sneak into his house, put this secret weapon in the house, and then we're all going to watch him freak out through the window. So they all go to the house. They're all staring in the window. One guy sneaks in, and it's like, I don't know how anybody could even stay in that cabin because the stuff was like literally hanging everywhere. I guess that was just the obstacle course to make it look, give you tension as he's sneaking around. I don't know, but it was very, very cluttered. Anyway, so he goes in the room, opens up the box, takes matches and is like doing something with it. And I'm like, okay, is this like fireworks or something? What is he doing? But then once he lights it, he's being very slow about it. I'm like, okay, this can't be fireworks, or else he would like run out as soon as he lit it. And then he places what's in the box, and then they go outside and they watch through the window. And it ends up being I guess like a decayed skull, like a rotting skull. It's got like
it
worms
looks like
and
the
stuff
skull that's on the cover of Fulci Zombie.
Right.
But with candles in the eyes. This is, I think, the best way I can describe it.
Right, yeah. There's like tea lights in the eye sockets, and then there's like, dirt and like earthworms and stuff in this skull. I mean, like, where the hell did you get like a decayed human skull from? I mean, maybe they made it. I don't know. Whatever it is. So the caretaker guy wakes up after they're tapping on the window. He freaks out when he sees this thing, and he kicks it over, and his legs immediately catch on fire.
Yes, he's very flammable.
Yes, extremely flammable. Like his legs immediately catch on fire, and then he, just goes woof, all up in flames, like he's covered in kerosene. And then he stumbles out the front door, flailing wildly, which you can tell is clearly a guy in a fire suit, like
huge suit.
Yeah, he's like very huge suit, and he's actually wearing a helmet. If you look closely, he's wearing a helmet. Like they're not even attempting to hide that this is a guy in a fire suppression suit.
Right.
Anyway, so he's flailing around as people under fire do. And he like rolls down the hill and kind of extinguishes himself in the river.
Yes, and all the kids are like, oh shit.
Yeah, the kids are like, uh-oh. And it's like, wah, wah. And then it just cuts out. Like, that's it. We don't get any, like, what happened to those kids at all. We cut into a hospital, where they show, it's like an orderly is like trying to get this other orderly, like, oh man, this is the most messed up thing I've ever seen. Like, I haven't been here for 10 years. You got to see this freak. Like, wow, these are some unprofessional hospital
right. He's
workers.
like, I've been here 2 days. Oh, you're going to age up really fast.
Yeah. It's like, wow. Like, this is, come on, guys. You can't, like, show the guy off like a freak show.
Right.
Anyway, so he drags this guy into the room. He looks and he's like, oh my God. And then, like, this, cooked hand comes out and like grabs the guy and he screams.
Yeah,
I guess just to show that he's been horribly burned and they thought he wasn't going to survive, but then he does. And then he got
Anakin Skywalkered.
Yes. So then we get a scene where it's like 5 years later, and then the guy like gets released from the hospital. He's wearing like a trench coat and thick boots and like he's dressed like the Invisible Man kind of with. It appears to be bandages all over his body, but they're like black bandages.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess they're just going for the creepy aesthetic or whatever. But, yeah, so he immediately goes to, because this is the early 80s, he goes to the shady Times Square of New York.
Yes, he essentially becomes the New York Ripper.
Right.
For a brief moment.
Right, yeah. And then I don't get this scene. I guess just to show that he's mean now. I don't know. But anyway, he like finds some like, bargain basement hooker on the street, and then goes into her house and then just stabs her.
Yeah, she looks pretty rough.
Yeah, again, like I was saying, she's like the dollar store hooker in the early '80s Times Square. She's not looking too fresh. So I guess we just get to see that. Oh yeah, he's evil now. He killed the hooker. That's it.
Yeah.
And then we go, to the new camp where all the campers are there. This is where we're introduced to all the people. There's Todd, who's some guy I don't know. Then we hit, Jason Alexander and Fisher Stevens. Fisher Stevens' name is Woodstock. I don't remember Jason Alexander's name. I guess it doesn't matter. And then we get Alfred, the creepy voyeur kid.
Yeah.
Who gets caught peeping at a girl in a shower. And then he was like, "Oh, just trying to scare her." Like, no. Very clearly that you were not there to try to scare her. You were there peeping on her. Like, that's what you were doing.
Yes,
and then everybody just kind of goes.
He pulled a Harvey Weinstein.
Right, yeah. It's like everybody, everybody just kind of like, "You shouldn't have done that. What's wrong with you?" But like, no one is considering any kind of like disciplinary action against this kid.
No.
Like, they're all like, "Oh, whatever." And then like literally in the next scene, they like bring him to where the girl he just peeped on is at. Like, no one, like, everybody's just like tone deaf, like, don't understand. Like, it's a traumatic experience. Why would you bring the guy to the same place where she just, whatever. So we get a couple of scenes where we see that Alfred is just like a creepy kind of voyeur.
And
person.
No one likes him.
Right, yeah. And it's very clear. We get introduced to, what's that other guy, Glazer, who is like,
he's
walking alpha male, like sexual assault trope. I mean, this guy.
I'm going to throw this out there right now. They talk about what it'd be like to make love with Glazer because all those muscles. And I looked at him, I go, "You and I have more muscles than he does."
Well, yeah, I got a lot of muscles. They're just covered under a layer of blubber.
Well, I'm saying, like,
I'm like a walrus.
They're talking about like he's going to be this big tough guy with this muscle bound guy, and he has no definition to him at all.
Right, like he never even takes his shirt off.
Right.
I mean, I guess to hide the fact that he really isn't muscular. But yeah, they didn't change the script.
He's like 30s strongman muscular, where they have the gut and they have the pants pulled up really tight, and like the boxers that the pants are up to their nipples.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we get a couple of like wacky, things. I'm not even going to go over all of them because they're pointless. It's just kind of like wacky instances where we see like, oh, these are just kids having fun. Woodstock shoots the Glazer in the butt with a BB gun while he's trying to hit on some other girl, aggressively.
He's trying to hit on all the girls on the raft.
Yeah. He like swam out to this raft and he's like, "Hey," he just spewing testosterone everywhere. And so they shoot him in the ass with a BB gun. And he goes, "Hey." And that's it.
And he's only like 30 feet away, and he doesn't do anything about it.
Right, he doesn't do anything about it. But the other thing that I thought was hilarious is like you could tell this is the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Because he's walking around with a BB gun that looks like a real gun.
Yep.
And no one says anything. Like he has it with him in like these camp meetings and stuff. Like he has it all the time, and no one says anything. Like, yeah, this is definitely early 80s. Like nobody gives a shit.
Right.
Not even an orange cap on the end because they didn't even make that law yet.
Right.
So we get a couple of like wacky hijinks things, or
just camp shenanigans.
Camp shenanigans. And anyway, so there's like, all the last year kids, which are, all the kids that we've been introduced to already, are going on a 3-day canoe camping trip down the river. Like, okay, so they all get in their canoe and there's this bizarre scene where they're all like splashing each other with their oars in their canoe, and they end up sinking one of the canoes, which is not talked about at all.
Well, and the thing that's weird is it's a 3-day trip. They're not concerned about anything getting just waterlogged.
Right. That's what I'm like. They're all like giggling and laughing as the canoe is sinking. I'm like, you probably got like food and your clothes and stuff in there. Like,
No.
I would be pissed.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so they all go down the river. They don't say how far, but I guess it's some distance down the river, and they're all gonna like camp out. So they get to this spot, and the forced sexual assault just starts. We get the one guy is like, oh, come on, let's go skinny dipping, and she's like, I don't want to go skinny dipping, like, I don't want to, I like you, but I don't really like you, blah, 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 back and forth, hot, cold, hot, cold. And so he finally convinces her to get in the water, and she swims over to him, and he's like, starts putting hands on her, and she's all like, hey, don't do that. He's like, okay, you fucking bitch. I mean, like, immediately goes from like hot to cold, and like forces her to get out. She gets out, and her clothes are gone. And they show them like hanging all over the trees, but apparently she can't see that. We see them hanging all over the trees.
They're not that spread out. Like, you can see her entire wardrobe in like a 10-foot line.
Right. But like, she's going, oh, I can't find my clothes, but her shoes are still there. So she puts her shoes on. And then she's like wandering through the forest, trying to find her clothes. And then, of course, the guy all in black comes out, and slices her throat with his gardening shears? I don't know what you call it. Landscaping shears. I don't know what those are.
They're the hedge trimmers.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Hedge trimmers. There you go.
Yeah.
And this is also an interesting point is the game Clock Tower that has the guy that's all in black and his weapon is hedge trimmers. This is the movie he got that idea from.
Right.
So yeah. So I mean, I guess The Burning had a big, huge like following in Japan. Like when they showed it in Japan, it like blew up. It's huge in Japan. Not so much here. I mean, it's known here.
Well, it's. I'll say this right now. It's because it is a blatant Friday the 13th ripoff.
Well, yeah.
A year later, it was trying to capitalize on Friday the 13th. So, it trying to ramp up everything from Friday the 13th.
Right.
That's why here it wasn't so big.
Right. So she gets her throat slit. The guy gets out of the water and just goes back to camp, not concerned about her safety in any way. Yeah, in any way whatsoever. So apparently they go to sleep for the night and they wake up the next day. It's literally, we don't see any night scenes. It's just, It goes day to day. And they're like, where's the girl at? Oh, I don't know. I don't care. They're like, weren't you guys like together? And he's like, yeah, but then she didn't like me anymore. So now I don't care. They're like, well, that's not good. So we got to go look for her. So they start to go look for her, and then they realize, oh no, all our canoes are gone.
Yes.
Like somebody got rid of all the canoes. They're like, okay, what do we do now? Let's build a raft. So everybody gets, instead of looking for the canoes, which I guess they do a little bit.
Well, we're looking for the canoes.
Yeah. Right. And so then they're like, oh, I guess we can't find the canoes. Okay, everybody go look for some wood. We're going to build a raft. So then we get another scene of more, unwanted sexual advances from Muscle Man to the girl who got peeped on earlier.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, he keeps putting hands on her. She keeps like telling him no. But again, it's this weird hot cold thing. You can tell like somebody that like is a big fan of sexual assault wrote parts of this because again, it's that hot cold, like, oh no, oh yes, oh no, oh yes, which doesn't happen in real life.
No.
But anyway, so we get that whole goofy thing. And then of course, they're attacked. And taken out. And
meanwhile, while Alfred the voyeur is
Alfred the voyeur is watching this happen.
Yes.
And then he goes, "Oh, that's interesting," and then kind of runs off.
Yeah.
And then they build the raft. They make like these weird looking oars out of like sticks and stuff. Anyway, so they're gonna go down. And back to the camp to get help or to get more canoes or something. So a bunch of them get on the raft. What, like six of them get on the raft? 6 of them,
yeah.
Yeah. So they're going on there. I think Fisher Stevens is one of them.
Yes.
So they're going down there, and they find one of the canoes, and they go up close to the canoe, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then apparently, Slasher Man was laying down in the canoe, waiting for them to get close, and he just gets up and literally slaughters all of them.
Perfectly stands on a canoe.
Right, yeah.
And was able to reach across an entire raft.
Well, I mean, where are they going to go, to be fair? I mean, they could have
Right.
just jumped in the water, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah.
So he just kills all of them.
Yes.
And so of course the raft, goes back up river because that's where the direction of the current.
Sure.
And
So
so
the canoe was sitting there doing nothing. I don't
Right,
think
yeah,
there's
the
a
canoe
current
was-
on this river.
right. Well, yeah, they have anchors, I guess.
Yeah.
So it goes back. People are like, oh, haha, they're playing a funny joke. And they pull the raft in, and no, they're all just dead. And
Yep.
there's like a severed arm in there somehow, whatever. So now everybody's like panicking, like, oh shit, like this is really bad. So what do you do when you panic and everything goes really bad? You all split up and run into the woods. Just essentially what they do.
Of course.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we get a whole lot of scenes of him picking him off one by one. And eventually we get to Alfred tries to warn Todd, like way after everybody else is like dead. Todd's kind of like the hero character, right? The protagonist.
Sure. Yeah, if you want to call him that, he's essentially the final boy.
Right, yeah. So he tells him, like, yeah, there's this guy killing people. I saw him kill some people. Like, we need to do something. So the main lady protagonist gets on the raft with a bunch of other kids, and they go back on the river, repeat the same thing that just ended in disaster.
Yep.
Like a couple hours ago, and they repeat the same thing, only this time they make it all the way back to camp, and they're fine. And they're like, oh yeah, there's a guy killing everybody, like, we need help. They're like, okay. Then that's it. That they kind of exit the movie at this point. So then Todd gets an axe from somewhere. I don't think we are ever explained where he gets the axe from.
Just an axe.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know where it came from.
Mining town.
Right, yeah. And then so they're like wandering through the forest. Alfred gets separated and he's being chased by the killer guy. And he gets to this, like, I don't know, concrete labyrinth? I mean, I don't even know what the hell that was. He was like going around all these corners and walls, and it looked like somebody made a labyrinth out of concrete in the middle of the woods.
Yes, a labyrinth to get to the mining shack.
Right. I'm like, what the hell? What is this? Like, what is going on here? Anyway, so yeah, so they're going
the ancient ruins of America.
Right. So he gets chased into this place, and he gets like attacked by hedge trimmer man. And he gets like pinned to the wall with his hedge trimmers around his one arm. His other arm is free, but he's just standing there screaming because the hedge trimmer is around his one arm and he can't.
Is it around it or in his arm? I thought it was in his arm.
I thought it was just around it. Like the blades were like touching his arm on both sides, but they're both stuck in the wall.
I assume they were in there. That's why he wasn't able to pull it out.
Well, I was like sitting there like, you have another hand. Like, pull it out.
Right.
Whatever. So Todd, of course, hears these screams and is, follows through the concrete labyrinth and into the mining area. And he goes in there, and then we get this like long, goofy scene of the guy has a flamethrower. Yeah. And he like walks around. Yeah, he like walks around the entire perimeter of the room, just like randomly shooting this flamethrower everywhere.
In the wooden shack.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, we get a flashback to we find out where Todd was one of the kids that was a part of, burning the guy 5 years ago.
Right.
So he was a camper back then. Now he's a camp counselor. So he'd like, okay, this is actually one of the people that did this to him. So then after that whole scene, they just kind of run away. Like, apparently they're like, oh, whatever. We see him with the flamethrower and all that kind of shit. We're just going to run, which of course, they don't, they get stopped. Kind of fight goes back and forth. Todd is losing the fight. And then Alfred stabs the guy in the back with the shears. And he falls down. And then they're like, oh, I guess he's dead. Oh, surprise. He gets back up again. And then Todd literally puts his axe through his face. And then Alfred sets him on fire with his flamethrower.
Yes.
And I guess at this point you can see like, yeah, we do get to see his actual face at this point, and it's like severely burned. He looks like the Chatterbox Cenobite.
He looks a mix between that and like the decaying Jason Voorhees face. Like when his face bursts out of the mask with the telekinesis chick. where she breaks his mask. Yeah.
I don't remember, but
yes.
yeah, I thought he looked like the Chatterbox Cenobite.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, they set him on fire, and then they're free, and then we go back and we see that the police have now arrived with the female who went with all the other campers back, and then the movie over.
Yes. Had you ever seen this movie before this past week?
I've never seen it. No, I knew of it. I've seen all the pictures. I knew all about, Jason Alexander and Holly Hunter and Fisher Stevens, and I didn't know about the Weinstein thing. I didn't realize that until I was watching the opening credits. But yeah, I had known of it, but I just assumed it was one of those like cheesy movies, and I just had no desire to watch it. I mean, proven right, of course. But no, I knew of it, but I've never watched it all the way through up until this point.
Okay. So then what were your first thoughts on
it? I mean, just kind of like badly it was written. I mean, the way that the people are like interacting with each other, it was just so ridiculously over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was like they had to like jam all this like camaraderie into like 10 minutes to like make you think they're best friends, and then when they get to the spot where they're getting murdered, they immediately all separate anyway. So none of that mattered.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of all over the place and a mess. And I guess this was like everybody's first movie that was involved in this, so I guess I'm not surprised. It was put together well enough for being everybody's first movie for sure. But I mean, yeah, it's not doing anything new.
Right.
It's just recycling, the stuff that was happening at that time, and it's just a bunch of people basically going, "Hey, we can make a horror movie too." And then they made like the same thing that everybody else made. I mean, that's essentially what it boiled down to.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, Friday the 13th was jumping on the Halloween bandwagon, and then you have The Burning, which was jumping on the Friday the 13th bandwagon, which is then, a copy of a copy of a copy.
Well, okay, at least Friday the 13th like changed venues.
Yeah.
And like changed the backstory, but like literally, I mean, The Burning did nothing different. Like it's the same exact plot.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, as you, I knew about this movie for a long time, and I don't know how I missed it though. When I was going through my phase in the 90s, it was probably not available on VHS or DVD by the time the mid 90s rolled around. I was talking 13, 14 years later. But yeah, you can definitely tell that it was trying to be a different Friday the 13th, and they really upped the body count from the original Friday the 13th.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that die in this.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the raft is about the same number of people that died in the Friday the 13th movies, just the raft alone.
Right.
But it's interesting to see this piece. It's in 1981. This wasn't a trope yet of the campfire story, the camp counselor, and all that stuff. It was in the infancy of the summer camp trope.
Well, I think this is the movie that made it a trope. I think, like it was around before, and this movie like did a whole Me Too thing, and then basically made it the trope.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, and to your point, Jason Alexander, he's like, it's George. He is George, 100% George. He does look like he's just wearing a hairpiece from the
right. Yeah, like he barely looks younger. Like barely looks younger. He looks exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's like, you want rubbers? I got your rubbers right here. He's George. He's George.
Right.
And the summer camp. What are your highlights though?
I mean, it's always going to be a highlight whenever I see it in a movie is the old Times Square. I'm still just fascinated by how Times Square, which is like, the definition of like, I don't know, corporate America, right?
Yep.
And kind of safety at this point, even with all those people. And then you look back at it in the early 80s and it is just like a seedy, dark underbelly of the city. It's just so interesting to see.
Yeah.
But I also say, I thought, because Savini did the effects in this,
Mm-hmm.
very early Savini, and they're still fun. I mean, like his face, his burned face was done pretty well. I mean, like, it wasn't fantastic, but for that time period, it was great. I mean, the blood looks decent. Like a lot of the kills looked fun. There wasn't
Yeah.
like any ridiculously like fake stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. It's Savini really starting to fine tune his craft, realistically. This is obviously after, he started early with Romero, especially with Dawn of the Dead. He had something right before that with Romero as well, and this is what his say fourth or fifth movie at this point in time that he was the lead special effects on, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. Like I said, I know he got his start in the 70s, so I was pretty sure he was like, good up until this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, the effects were pretty good, especially, we know, you hear about the budgets of these movies and you go, how they do some of this stuff with the budget they have is amazing.
Right.
I think Savini showed that he's able to work on a shoestring budget and still.
Well, for sure. I mean, I think that's just the definition of horror effects is you don't have a budget. You got to make do with some wacky stuff that you make up on the spot because that's all you're getting.
Right. Yeah, because he did the Friday the 13th as well. Right? Because wasn't it him talking about that he was the decapitated Mrs. Voorhees? That's why her hands or his hands are just man hands.
Hairy hands.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I know that he's also kind of credited for having that blood recipe that was used in so many horror movies at the time because it looked realistic-ish. Because like before that, they were just using like red paint. Like if you watch any like Argento movie, you see it's just like, bright red paint. That like half the time they don't even bother like thinning, so it still looks like thick house paint that's dripping on the ground. So like he had a formula that was better. I mean, he says that he didn't come up with the formula; he got it from another guy, but it's kind of sort of credited to him as being the guy who started using it in films to make it look realistic in this time
period. Yeah, and he is truly showing why he's the master. He is what most people strive to be in special effects or practical effects, and it's just astounding.
Right, and yeah, and again, he did it with like no budget, and that's why he had to do. That's why he had to make this stuff look good with what he had, because he had nothing essentially. So when he did get money later on, it looked amazing because then he had actual like he could do what he wanted to do.
Right. I mean, I'm more than $5 to explode a head.
Exactly.
Do you have any other highlights?
I mean, just just interesting seeing like the start of all these people.
Yeah.
I mean, again, they're not a huge role or anything, but it's interesting to see them so young and so early in like a terrible bad horror movie.
Well, and realistically, we talk about this a lot. Is a lot of people get their starts in B horror movies, and it's just especially especially stuff that we've missed in our lifetime. To see the star power that is in existence in these movies is always great to see.
Oh yeah, I think it's easier in horror movies because horror movies you don't need a huge star that's going to like carry a franchise because they never survive until the next one anyway. And even if they do, they're usually killed off immediately in the next one anyway. So like you're not looking for like franchise star power. You're just looking for somebody good enough, which is that's why you have a lot of like first time actors and stuff. Which is why I think it's a lot easier for them to break into that, and not only that, but it's cheaper too. So it's they're not they know they're not going to get like the top A-list stars or anything. So but it works out for everybody.
Oh yeah. What about low points? I'm sure you have low points.
Oh yeah, one low point is you can tell the Weinsteins were involved in this movie because, dear God. Like, there is so many sexual advances that are unwanted in this movie. It's like every time there's a man and a woman together on screen. I think the only ones that are like actually like have a kiss moment that isn't immediately followed by "ew, get away from me" is like Todd and the main female protagonist. I don't remember her name, the blonde girl. That's the only time that a kiss is shared, and there's no like manhandling involved there. It was just like a quick like kiss. That was the only time that we got a normal consensual like relationship. Every other instance is like, somebody hitting on somebody that doesn't want it, somebody getting, peeped on, somebody like, oh man, it's just all over the place. Like, I'm sure this is, the Weinstein idea of acceptability at that time, but holy cats.
Yeah.
It is not good, and it is painful to watch. It's like, another one? Come on. We already had 3. Like, we don't need, like, having the one guy that's like super horny and trying to like convince a girl, like, that's okay. But literally, we have multiple people doing it in this movie. There's at least 3.
Yes.
It's like, wow. It's just, it's a little too much for me. And 2 is we got no reasoning as to why they would like set the poor dude on fire, right? I know the fire was an accident. I get that part. I'm saying, like, they say like, this guy is so bad, we need to play this trick on him. Like, no examples are given.
Yeah.
We don't know if these are just like, kids that are jerks, and he's like, hey, stop being jerks, and they don't like that. I mean, we have no idea why. So like, we don't know. This guy might have been justified. I mean, obviously he's not justified in killing all these innocent people, but like, maybe he was so wronged. Like, he was super nice and it was, treated like that, so now he hates all kids. I don't know. Who knows? We don't know if this guy has reasoning behind what he does or not.
Right.
And also, if you have your choice of weapons, why would you choose hedge trimmers?
Well, he was. I think they said that he was. They quote say that like he threatened kids with his hedge trimmers, so that became his trademark weapon.
I mean, but like, okay, you could have like just taken the screw out from the middle, and then you have 2 knives.
Yes.
Which is a hell of a lot better to kill people with than freaking hedge trimmers.
Yeah. Very, very, very true.
But whatever. Yeah, I just. But yeah, I didn't think we got enough of a backstory as like, I mean, we got more backstory as like him wanting to murder people after that incident, but we didn't get anything before as to like what was wrong with this dude that you had to do that to.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other low points?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And as you pointed out earlier, everything takes place pretty much during the day. They are asleep in a forest. You could easily just go up there and go stab, stab, stab.
Right. But yeah, no, he waits until it's daytime and they're running through the forest.
Right. And, and as you said, the backstory is like, hey, I may have been a jerk, but I was set on fire. And, one of the guys he's going after was one of the kids responsible for this. So you go, okay, is that justified? A little bit, everyone else, not so much. But yeah, it's just, it needed more lore to it, other than, yeah, he looked like a homeless Clint Howard in the 80s.
Right.
Right. And obviously, something's wrong with him to be just instantaneous flammable. Like, he is all the things you're not supposed to have around your furnace or dryer in your house is what he's like. He has to be like covered in old paint. He has to have like paint thinners doused in him and wearing old newspaper clothes, just for that fire just to be like, boom, you're kindling at that point.
I mean, like, yeah, like we've all seen tea lights, right? I mean, we all know what happens when you knock over a tea light. You get like you get wax on stuff, but like it doesn't catch on fire. It's correct. It's not like it's made of gasoline. I mean, it's a little tiny little light. It's I don't understand. But yeah, he's immediately like all caught on fire, and then he was as flailing around, knocked over a gas can. And then but the gas can was on the ground, but somehow it made him go up in flames more. I don't understand what was happening.
Yes. No, I mean, yeah, and obviously you fucking bitch, sexual
fucking bitch. I mean, immediately it went like it was binary. It went from 0 to 1. Like,
yep,
either like horny and like trying to convince someone that's not interested to like hatred. It's like the switch going off on.
Yes, and I don't know about you, I could not just sleep on the ground, just using my arm as a pillow as a camp out. That seems awful.
I mean, yeah. Not only that, but they would not do that to kids, even in the 80s. They'd at least give them a sleeping bag.
And I gotta say though, the bunk rooms, the bunks, like you wouldn't think this was like a summer camp because like drywalled with windows and all that stuff. Like inside these, these bunk, these cabins were like really nice. Usually it's just like old wood frames and all that stuff and rotting and
well,
everything
it
like
depends on where you're going. If it's like a well-funded camp, yes, they are like that. Have you ever been to camp?
Yes.
They did not have nice walls at your camp,
No.
I'm guessing? Okay.
No. But, with the accents, you couldn't tell is it supposed to be every town USA, right? That's the idea between the summer camps is, it could be anywhere. Every town, they said every town or every state has a crystal lake. And that's the idea of the burning, as well. It's just like, you got some obvious New Yorkers and then obvious like Californians.
Right.
And it's somewhere in between. So,
well, they don't tell you where so that you can insert yourself wherever you want.
Right. And I like that they ended this with like Todd, 30 years later or something, telling the same story.
Was Todd it Todd? I don't know if it was Todd. I thought it was just like a legend, like it continued kind of thing.
I don't know. It was weird. So, all right. So you go first. How many campfire stories out of 10 do you give this movie?
I mean, again, there was some interesting things that I enjoyed seeing, but I think overall the movie was not great. So I'm going to give it 4 campfire stories out of 10.
4. Wow. Yeah, this is definitely clearly a product of their time and the people that created it. I don't think it was as campy as I thought it was going to be, as cheesy as I thought it was going to be. But I will give it 6 campfire stories out of 10. But I enjoy cheesiness that exists. And there is some cheesiness, but it's not like a full-on parody. Like it was trying to take itself serious. Surprising.
Right.
So yeah. I wasn't upset I watched it.
No, yeah, again, I wasn't upset either. There's interesting things. I'm just saying overall.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a great movie.
Perfectly fair. All right. What we got next?
That's The Forest, buddy. That's all you.
Yes. Yes. So as you said earlier, The Forest came out in 2016. And instead of taking place in America in a summer camp, this takes place in, I don't even know how I want to even try to pronounce this forest, the Okijihira, something like that. It's the suicide forest.
Okefenokee.
Okefenokee.
No, I don't know how you say it. It's Ioe Bahaki or I don't know.
Something like that, yeah. So Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones Legends, or the person making out with Captain America in the first Avenger, she stars and plays a dual role. She plays twins Jess and Sarah. And we see her, kind of in, I assume, America. I don't think England, even though her fiance or husband sounds British or something like
some
that.
kind of foreign. It sounded like he was Spanish or something.
Something like that. Anyway, she gets, talking to her husband, that he has stuff going on there. They had a short little boss dinner. I think he's a chef, it seems like.
I have no idea. I don't think, I don't know. They didn't say. I think it's just his boss, and they're just showing that it was an important time and that she wasn't focused. That's all. I think it was just supposed to.
Yeah. So then she gets a phone call from Japanese police saying that her sister is Jess, who we differentiate because she has brown hair and Sarah has dirty blonde hair.
Right.
Is that she is dead, and she's seen walking into the suicide forest, and usually it's been like a couple of days. Like, okay, well, she's definitely dead, right? Because usually people that venture into there and don't come out within a day are presumed dead. So she's talking to her, I guess, fiance or husband, saying, "Hey, I have to go, bail her out and all this stuff." So she flies to Japan. She starts having flashbacks and dreams, talking about like her, like last time she saw her sister, I believe. It seems like, right, that they're packing up. Their grandma had just died, and packing stuff up. She's like, "Hey, we're sorry that grandma wasn't there. She understood that we had to grow up and do our own things." Her sister's like, "Hey, I'm going to Japan to be a teacher, like an English teacher."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you don't even really need a teaching degree to teach English in Japan. They just want people that natively speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So she's like, "Hey, it's like, it's been 6 months since grandma died. She'll understand this stuff and everything like that, right?" But yeah, so she's talking to her husband or fiance and going, "I have to go there. I don't think she's dead. I would know if she was dead." That's kind of the running theme throughout this movie is the whole twin mythos of being able to tell when your twin's in trouble and feel what they're feeling and know if they're alive or not and stuff like that. So she gets to Japan, and it was really just amazingly, like, her hotel room is really nice. She's scared by a homeless guy in the street at one point. But then she eventually ends up at her hotel, where her sister, I believe, was staying as well. And she goes into the bar or restaurant that exists in every hotel, and she's kind of drinking, and she meets a reporter. And I'm trying to remember, does he come to her first or she go to him?
He comes to her first. He like has like a line, and then he's like, "Oh, you come here often?" And then she says like, "Oh, 4 days ago, where I met you last time."
Right.
Which was odd. I think she was just trying to fish to see if this guy had met her sister or something.
Right. Yeah, because just saying, hey, she might, just trying to get any lead she possibly can. And she's like, "Oh no, I yeah, I met your sister," or something like that, which he then goes back on previously and says all that stuff. He's just such a trying to pick her up. They end up drinking heavily, and he goes, "Hey, I'm an Australian reporter," in my American accent.
Yeah, the Australian travel reporter.
Yeah, but he's clearly not Australian. So he's talking about the suicide forest, and she's talking about how her sister went in there. I think she started talking about that she tried a couple suicide attempts before, and he's like, "Hey, I need to record this, so I have your permission to do this." She says yes, and starts telling the story about he's like, "Hey, what happened to your parents?" She's like, "Oh, they were killed in a drunk driving accident." So we flash back to her being a kid with her sister and being in a weirdly set up house. And he's like, "Oh, we heard this crash, and it's our, our parents died there and we never caught the guy." And as she's talking about it, you go, okay, the first sound maybe was a car crash. The second sound to hear was definitely a gun. And talking about like, oh, how they found them in the car crash in their front yard. But in the flashback, it's very apparent that they're in their basement and a gun was used and her parents were killed. Now, she doesn't know what the bodies look like because she closed her eyes during it, and that's kind of her thing. Jess always would look at the trouble and would see the bad stuff, and it possibly messed her up, and she just was ignorant to it all. Now, I don't know if she's purposely telling him a false narrative about what really happened, or she just kind of like suppressed it, and that's in her mind. It was a car crash.
Yeah, I think at this point they're just setting up the whole thing because, like, I guess it's the next scene. We're not really giving away too much. Is many like people look at her and they say, "Oh, you're too sad to go in the forest."
Right.
And I think they were like, showing like her, kind of quote unquote perfect life before this point. Like, why would she be sad? That doesn't make sense. So I think they set up her lying about that to just kind of show you that she has not come to terms with those deaths at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think her sister has, but in not a healthy way. And that is, I think, what's going on. She was just saying that, she always has to come in and bail out her sister when she makes bad decisions. And that's basically just because she feels bad that she didn't experience the same thing that she did, and that she's more willing to help her because of that.
Right.
So like, the sister took the brunt of it, so she didn't have to. So now she helps her as much as she can.
Right. So anyway, she's like, hey, I need to go there. She gets seemingly drunk and calls her fiance, who doesn't answer, saying, hey, this is what's going on here. We're going to go into the forest looking for her. She then goes to the school, and, students see her and all start screaming. And like, oh my God, she's back from the dead, because they all know that Jess went into the forest and that she's an angry, vengeful spirit. They kind of she learned a little bit history of it, that they took a class trip to the suicide forest, because it's still just a forest for a lot of people. And then I think they get a little bit of the background, from the translator there, that, this forest was used, which is outside of Mount Fuji, and that in the past, when during times of low resources such as food and stuff like that, that they would send in the elderly, the blind, the disabled in there to die. So there other, the rest of the for the greater good, the rest of the, villages are able to survive by having less mouths to feed and stuff like that. So this became a place where people go to kill themselves. So she does go into, she goes to like the lack of better, the ranger cabin,
like a visitor's center.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we found your sister. Like, you did? Yeah. She lives into the basement, which she has, big fear of basements, because that's where her parents were killed. And she goes down there. It's like, hey, we need someone stays watch in case, the vengeful spirits come out. And you hear very muffled stuff above, and the person goes, hey, I gotta go check it out. This is your sister. She, uncovers a body which seems to be breathing, and it's not her sister. So yeah, she is okay. Great. She's still alive. This isn't her body. She's like, hey, I need to get a guide. And she talks to Aiden, the traveling reporter. Is like, hey, if you want a story, come with me. He's like, hey, I know a guy that does this. There are people that go in there to retrieve the bodies. Because a big thing is, a lot of people that want to be found leave a trail to their body, right? Different color ropes or ribbons that you're able to follow. And with it not being on the books, they don't have to take bodies with them right at this point in time. Because usually if you go there during a official piece finding, you have to take the bodies with you. It's like, we don't have time for that. Finding your sister is a time critical thing. The longer she's in there, the more likely she is to be dead. But she's like, hey, she's, the guy's like, she's dead. She's like, no, I can feel it. She's definitely alive. And they're only in there for, I feel like, just maybe 4 hours before the guy goes, hey, we need to start turning back. It's getting dark. We don't want to be in this forest after dark, because that's where the bad things happen.
Well, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. If you walk for 4 hours, you'd have to walk back
right.
for 4 hours. So, right. Yeah.
But she's like, they were just kind of taking random places to follow. She's like, hey, I feel like my sister's this way. And they do find her tent. And the guide goes, a tent is usually a good sign, because if you bring a tent, that means you still haven't decided whether you're going to commit suicide or not, that you're still thinking about it. They find the tent, her clothes are still there, they're hanging, that her stuff is still there, so she's still alive. Along the way they do find a couple bodies that the guide's like, okay, I have to mark this. They would come back later to get this. The guy's like, all right, we gotta go, and Sarah goes, no, I'm staying. She's gonna come back to her tent, and he's like, oh no, you really shouldn't do that. You don't want to be here by yourself. That's the angry spirits can mess with your mind and cause harm. He's like, no, I'm out of here. But the reporter's like, you know what? I'll stay. I want to make sure that we're not alone in this. So he kind of creepily watches her, and I just gotta say, for her being in the forest for a couple days and stuff like that, her cell phone lasts a very long time to have a flashlight continuously in use.
She wasn't continuously using it. If we say like she was only using it the times that we see her use it, overall it wasn't that much time.
Yeah, that's fair. So she's sleeping. The guy's just kind of watching her. All of a sudden there's like a noise outside her tent. She goes and follows it in the night, and a girl that seems to know that, hey, I know where your sister is. But following her is like, oh no, can't find her. So they go back to the camp and just go back to sleep. The next day they're like, okay, we're picking this up. Even though the guy told them, hey, stay here at this tent and I will come get you. They decide to continue their pursuit in search of Jess against the guide's judgment call. Kind of meanwhile, all this is going on there. There seems to be some tension that the reporter is trying to impart himself onto Sarah, and she's becoming more and more paranoid. Kind of like diving into the darkness that is in the forest. Right.
We also get at this point where she's definitely starting to see things that the forest wants her to see.
Yes, she got her hand cut. She sees a body flowing in the river. She sees that her cut in her hand is starting to grow maggots, and she takes the knife because she's given the knife because the reporter's like, hey, you don't clearly seem to trust me. Here's my knife. That way you have the weapon and I'm unarmed. She's like ready to start seeing, digging out the maggots that she sees going down her arm underneath her skin, which I'm sure you absolutely love that scene.
Maggots. Obviously I don't want maggots on me, but they don't bother me seeing them because they're so often showed in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
They don't bother. Obviously, if I see them in real life and they're on me, that's gross, but they don't bother me too much in movies.
Yeah. So so Sarah's becoming more and more suspicious of Aiden. She's like, let me see your phone. Why? Let me see your phone. Well, I'm locking it. It takes like 5 minutes to unlock it. She's going through
5 minutes. He took 2 seconds to unlock. He took exactly the amount of time he needed to unlock.
Well, she acted like he was purposely.
Well, yeah, because he didn't immediately hand her the phone. She was like, "What are you doing? Don't touch anything." Because she's obviously in a heightened paranoid state at this point.
Right. That she's really suspicious that he had something to do with her disappearance. And she does find a picture of her sister on there, and then she's like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, I'm deleting all the recordings on your phone that I told you could have. So, okay. The Aiden goes like, no, I had nothing to do with your sister. And something to bring up is like, he had a power bar. That's Japanese is like, okay, that's supposed to be like a foreshadowing later on, right? Anyway, so she starts hearing voices. She kind of runs away from Aiden, and she starts chasing what she believes to be the
reason why she runs away from Aiden is when she's checking through his phone, she sees a picture of her sister sitting in the tent.
Yes,
it's a yellow tent, so it's easily noticeable. Right. She sees a picture of her in the tent, and he's asking her, "What do you see?" And she throws the phone, freaks out, and runs.
Right. So, alluding to, not known to us at this point in time, that she is seeing things that aren't actually there.
Right. Yeah. She's seeing things that the forest wants her to see that aren't necessarily there.
Yes.
Yeah. But we don't know at this point.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think we know even at the end of the movie if she really saw that or not.
Right.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So anyway, she gets away from Aiden. She's kind of running around. She sees a body and she falls into a hole, and she sees the Asian girl there, and she starts following her, kind of like a cat and mouse. And she finally reaches her, and then realizes she's like possessed or an angry spirit, right? It's like, oh, she's probably one that was hanging here and was just kind of leading her towards her doom, right? And wandering around, she gets in there, she sees like the classic viewfinder, and she's looking through it because in the flashback originally, her sister was looking at the viewfinder, just kind of looking at things, and she starts going through the viewfinder, and then she then really sees what actually happened through the viewfinder, of that it was a murder suicide, that her dad had a gun, killed her mom, and then killed himself. And she starts flipping through the pictures, and it's just scenes of the stuff that she didn't want to look at, that she seemingly didn't see, which is questionable at this point in time, whether she actually saw this horribleness or not.
I think the questionable thing at this point in time is that a shotgun suicide is not that clean.
No, it's not. And like her dad comes kind of, she's transported back to that scene. Her dad jumps out of the picture. She drops it. Anyway, she's like freaking out. She gets to the hole and realizes that, she, from falling down, her ankle's pretty messed up. She's calling for help, which then Aiden happens to be close enough to hear her cries for help and helps her get her out. And then she's like, okay, this isn't cool. You helped me, but that's still one thing. And he's like, hey, I found this ranger station. We could stay there. And staying there, they get in there. She sees the package of the same power bar as a rapper already in the station. She's like, how'd you know this was here? He's like, I just happened to stumble upon it. He's like, trying to fix the radio. He's like, hey, I need that knife back. She's like, for what? Oh, I could smash the radio open, or I can use this knife to pry it open and try to fix it, which, he seemingly has skills throughout this movie that doesn't seem necessary for him going to space camp. Just because you go to space camp means you don't know how to build a fire or work on electronics, apparently.
Well, okay. I would say a kid that goes to space camp is more likely to know how to fix electronics than a Boy Scout.
Yes.
If I had to choose between those two people, who would be more likely to know how to fix electronics, I'm going to go with the space camp kids. I think that stands.
Yeah. Yes. And then she's, hey, what's this door here? It's locked. What's behind her? He goes, probably, she's like, it's a basement. It's like, why do you think it's a basement? It's probably just a closet. She knows it's basement. And then she's
right. Like, okay, a ranger station in the middle of a forest is not going to have a basement. Like that would involve like either a lot of people digging or like a backhoe, which you're not going to get in the middle of the forest.
No. And then, kind of a note is passed back and forth. She thinks it's Jess, and hey, is he still out there? Is Aiden still out there? She goes, yes. Got to be wary of him. So she goes into the kitchen, finds a knife, and
it says more than that. It says he's going to kill us.
Yes.
It literally deliberately says he is going to kill us. You have to go get the key.
Yeah, which she gets a kitchen knife and confronts him, like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. This isn't true. And then she's like, then he starts feeling like, okay, she's going to stab me or slit my throat if I don't tell her what she wants to hear. He's like, yeah, the key's in my boot.
Right.
He realized, he's like, okay, something's wrong here. Do we still not trust Aiden or not? We don't really know. He goes like, let me get the key from my boot. And then they kind of have a fight, and she stabs him. And he's dead.
Well, she stabs him more than once.
Yes. But as he's dying, then she kind of has like a flashback. It's like, oh, he was telling the truth. There wasn't really a picture on the phone. There was no voice at the door. It's just all this isn't real. But she still goes down there.
Here's the thing. They don't ever tell us that.
Right.
We don't ever get that clarification. I mean, you can assume that, but we don't ever get any kind of clarification or closure at all.
Yeah, but she realizes
I'll get into it later.
Yeah, she realizes that she's seen some things, not everything though. Anyway, she opened the basement door in quotes opens up, and it is a basement door, but leads to the basement where her parents were killed. And she finally sees the entire scene and has the truth of it. Her dad comes alive and like gripping on her arm, she starts like slicing his fingers off of her arm. And then she's able to escape. And as she's running, she happens to see the search party that came back. The guy that had brought in enforcements trying to find people that are alive out there, and trying to go on it. And then she sees her sister kind of running towards the search party, and she's kind of chasing after her. But Jess is not able to hear her. And that, she has a kind of a flashback like, oh, when I was cutting the fingers off of the grip of my dad, I was actually cutting my wrist. And this is just kind of a realization that wasn't real either. And she's kind of dying, and she is then pulled into the ground or the floor by the Japanese girl ghost. And as the search party is giving up, we see that a girl made it too, and it's Jess. And the fiance of Sarah is there. Is like, hey Jess, it's me. Is Sarah out there? She goes, no, I can know that she is dead. I can feel it. She's no longer here. Yeah, and then the end is that we see, the guide sees Sarah kind of as a ghost. End of movie.
Yep.
So, this isn't my first time seeing this movie. It's probably my second or third time. And I enjoyed the movie as a whole. My first thoughts was, this is an interesting thing because, just kind of like, instead of J-horror being an Americanized remake, we are taking something that does exist in Japanese world and their lore and their belief system, Americanizing it. And it's weird to see that stuff like that, that cross culture, mythos, because in our country, we don't necessarily believe in the vengeful spirits like the Japanese do, the Yuris or whatever they're called. But I think this does a good job of kind of portraying that cultural belief that exists. And it's just, we can call a bad ending a bad ending. It is what it is. And we like bad endings here. And overall, I mean, it's a solid movie. I think it has good mind games that you don't know what's real, what's not, who's telling the truth, who's not. And overall, I just, I thought it was a pretty well put together movie. Was this your first time seeing it, or have you seen it before?
No, I've seen it before.
So what were your first thoughts and then rewatches on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically Japanese horror as told through an American lens. I mean, that's essentially what this movie is. It's just Japanese horror made friendly for an American audience. But I mean, it's good. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a great movie. I mean, it's okay. I think there's a lot of loose threads in this movie. I mean, there's a lot of trickery stuff that's interesting and fun, but there's also a lot of just wide open stuff. Like, why are these things happening? What is going on? And why does it end up the way that it does? We get no answers. And, I'm okay with no answers sometimes, but this one is the kind of movie that basically sets it up like they're going to tell you what's going on, and then they just give up. You know what I mean? Like, they start out being very, very meticulous with things that you know and things that you don't know. And then by the end of the movie, they just throw it out the window and they just don't care. It's like, figure it all out on your own. Like, here's a bunch of crap, sift through the crap. And then, you sift through all the crap and it's just crap. There's nothing good.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good movie that suffers from just a bad third act.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I'll go into my highlights first and we'll get into yours. I thought the acting, for the most part, was pretty good. I like the atmosphere. I like that, it is a cultural belief. And, it's like I said, it's always interesting to me to see different belief systems and takes on it when it's not coming from that country, because, we may go, oh, this isn't anything special to us. It's not scary to us because we don't have that belief system in necessarily, like I said, the vengeful spirits. So does it get lost in the American translation a little bit? But I think, for me, it's always nice to see that insight.
Yeah, well, suicide has a different connotation in Japan than it does here. So where here, suicide is always like a very depressing or like the end of a bad road. You know what I mean? That's how it is here. Like suicide is always a tragedy in the U.S. So much so that that's why they don't allow, people that are suffering and in pain to like end their own lives, because again, we still have that kind of moral law that says that suicide is bad regardless of any circumstances. To where in Japan, it's a lot different.
Yes.
They have a lot different of a history of it. They have a lot of history of like ritual suicide, when people failed, when that was like their ultimate way of saying like, I messed up, I'm sorry. I can retain my honor by killing myself for you. But we don't have that in America. I think Americans are a little too selfish for that. So the Japanese people are they think more of, I'm not going to say all of them, but their culture as a whole thinks more of the whole culture rather than the individual.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting culture, and it does lose a bit through the eyes of America, but I think, and they don't really try to change your mind. And I guess that's a cultural thing. You're not going to change people's cultural mind.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting story.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it taking place in the idea of the real life forest it takes a whole other meaning to it, right? That this place is real. It does exist, and it's just a story set into it. It's kind of like our Appalachian Mountain hillbillies stories, right?
Right.
What about highlights for you?
Highlights again, the suicide forest in Japan. I think it's very cool. I think it's very interesting. I think it's just kind of fascinating, really, that people keep that tradition going, even centuries later. I find it fascinating, but I don't. It's not something I would ever want to like go see and go touristy and go take pictures of it. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful.
You don't want to be Logan Paul.
Yeah, I don't want to be like the Paul, guy, whatever it is.
Logan idiocy. Paul, yeah. Yes.
So just tone deaf. Like just doing things without looking at the repercussions for doing them. I would never do that simply because to me it would feel disrespectful.
Yeah.
Doing it in a place where other people are, and I wouldn't take pleasure out of it. But I mean, and maybe I would walk through like the regular path, but it's not like I would go looking for bodies or anything.
Right.
Again, and also Natalie Dormer. I do like Natalie Dormer a lot. I think she's pretty great in just about everything she's been in.
Mm-hmm.
And watching this movie, I came to the conclusion that Natalie Dormer is what would happen if Maggie Gyllenhaal became an elf. She has a lot of similarities with Maggie Gyllenhaal, but like kind of like in a sharper. They kind of higher cheekbones, and I really feel like her ears should be pointed like an elf. Like she has elf features. Like she needs to be in some kind of movie where she plays an elf. So I think she would be perfect for that. So maybe in the Rings of Power she could play an elf or something.
I now that you said it, yes, they both kind of like side mouth talk, right?
Yeah, they have a lot of similarities. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it was like I was thinking that she has a lot of similarities to Maggie Gyllenhaal, but she has much sharper features.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. And not only that, do we get one Natalie Dormer? We get two Natalie Dormers.
Yes.
She plays her own twin. which is
Yes.
fun. But yeah, no, I'll agree with you on the dark, atmosphere and trickery. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun the way they do it. Like, you don't know what to trust, and again, I had to actually turn the lights off in the room because I couldn't, it gets dark so often.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, sometimes I couldn't see what was even going on because, even with a little bit of glare, you lose a lot.
Right.
So I had to watch it in the dark to catch everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, overall that was good.
Well, we roll into your low points then.
You want me to do low points?
Yeah.
Okay. First low point. When she first gets to Japan, she gets to the restaurant, right?
Yep.
And she orders sushi, and they give her sushi on the plate, and it shows the sushi twitching.
Yes.
Now that twitching is some of the worst CGI I've ever seen in my life. It is terrible. I mean, obviously there's not a whole lot of CGI happening in this movie, but it was horrible. It looked bad. I could do better than that. I don't even know how to do it. If I learned the basics of doing it, I could make it look better than that. It was like they had some first year student do that, and over a weekend or something. It did not look good. And again, most of this other stuff is okay. Aiden, what the hell was going on with Aiden? Right? We don't get any clarification. Did he see her? Did he know the sister? Did that picture actually exist? What was his purpose there? Was he in that ranger station before? Did he have Jess in that ranger station before? We don't know. We have no idea.
Right.
We're never given any answers at all. And again, the way that it was so meticulous with setting everything up in the beginning of this movie, I really feel like a different person wrote the third act of this, or a different person filmed the third act, because the first two are very meticulous with all the things that are there and the proof of this and that and all that. Everything is very set up. And then it's you get into the third act and they just throw it all out the window. Nope, this is where we're going. And we're taking all of this other information and gutting it. You don't get any of that. So we don't know it. Aiden, I mean, she murdered Aiden. I'm pretty sure that's a tragedy. I'm pretty sure we get all that. But did he deserve a part of that? Did he know Jess? Did he not? Again, we never got any answers. Usually in these movies, we at least get a little bit of a slip or a little bit of a whatever. We kind of got that when he was talking about his brother. But again, he was just trying to commiserate with her to get her, to try to speak her story. He wasn't faking, anything significantly for her and her sister.
Right.
But again, we should have got something like that in that thing where he slipped and he said something he shouldn't have known.
Right.
Or something, anything like that. Or we show proof that picture was on his phone. He never acknowledged that. If she was so sure she saw her sister's picture on that phone, why would she let him pull her out of that hole?
Right.
Why would she go with him to this ranger station? If she was so sure that she saw that picture, why the hell would you go with that guy?
Correct.
Again, there's so many things that are unanswered and so many things that are just open-ended ridiculously. It doesn't make any sense at all. And again, apparently there was a basement in that ranger station, because when they showed her, cutting her own arm instead of cutting her dad's fingers off of her arm,
she's the bottom of stairs.
She was in a stoned basement, just like the visitor center was. So apparently there was a basement there.
Right.
Again, I don't know. There's just so many unanswered things at that point. And then two is what the hell was the point of it? Okay, her sister was the one that opened her eyes and saw all this terrible stuff, right? So she went into the forest to maybe kill herself because she was upset about that stuff. And so her sister felt her distress and went out there to try to find her or save her. And then she sacrifices herself so that Jess could live, but she didn't do it on purpose. I could understand if she understood, okay, I have to do this for Jess to live. That would be, a justification, she's selflessly sacrificing herself so that her sister could live. We don't get that at all. She just gets tricked.
Yes.
It's okay, if she gets tricked, why the hell would her sister get out?
Right. I agree with that, because she always says that Jess took the brunt of everything and Jess did things to protect her.
Right. And then she came in to bail her out, to help her out after the repercussions happened, right? So I get why she goes there to save her. I just don't. I think, again, this is why I really feel like the third act was rewritten by somebody else. is like if she was there to understand, like, okay, I have to see the things that she saw, and I have to sacrifice myself so that she can live a full life. I will do that for her because she was strong when we were kids and I wasn't. That I totally get that. I think that would have made a nice ending, a nice sacrifice, right? A kind of a redeeming of her for not looking at it when they were kids, and then give her the strength to carry on as an adult, right? Like, I get that. But the way that the movie portrayed it, she just gets tricked.
Yes.
She doesn't do it on purpose. And again, at the end, she's trying to run away. Like, she thinks she's going to get saved. And only at the very end does she realize, oh, I got tricked. That sucks.
Yep.
Again, like, she didn't want to sacrifice herself. That's what I'm saying. Like, if she didn't want to sacrifice herself, why would her sister get out? Okay, if she was just getting tricked, why wouldn't they both be there?
Right.
Again, it's so many things. Like, again, this whole third act of this movie just falls apart, and there's no answers. And I'm okay with that. But, like, again, we're led up to a point where we're going to get an answer, and then it just goes flop. And it really, really bothered. The ending of this movie really bothers me.
Yeah, I mean, I completely, agree with that. As much as we love bad endings, this was like a figure out for yourself. Too bad, so sad. You answer the question. We don't know how to answer it for you.
Right. And again, we talk about this. We usually enjoy that kind of stuff. I like, again, I don't like no lore. No lore bothers me because then I don't even have a starting.
Right.
Now, when I get a little bit, okay, you get that, you scratch the surface and you see, oh, there's a whole, page of lore underneath this little scratch that I see. But I don't get all of it. That's okay. That's okay. Because we're getting hints of a grander world. That's fine. But like if you, say, oh, look at all this lore, and then you just do something else that's not even in the lore. Like, whoa, okay, how am I supposed to take this? What is the point of this thing? That kind of stuff bothers me.
Do you think it was maybe a loss in translation, for lack of a better word, in it, that we don't understand fully that belief system to understand why it would have ended that way? Or do you think it's just poorly written?
I think it's just poorly written.
Okay.
I mean, I don't, again, I'm not going to pretend to understand the Japanese stance on this forest and on suicide, but I've read a lot about it. And again, I'm not going to say that I would know either way. I'm just saying I think I would have some kind of inkling as to, like, this would be a cultural thing that she doesn't get because she is an American, but I don't get that feeling at all. I just get the feeling that she was tricked. She was tricked into killing herself when she didn't want to. And then the forest is saying, okay, well, you sacrificed yourself, so we're going to let your sister go, which doesn't make sense because it has to be a mindful sacrifice in order for it to mean something. You can't just accidentally kill yourself and then a good result happens in this supernatural, kind of a ring that they put us in, right?
Right.
In that world, accidental suicide is not going to free someone from a supernatural thing. To me, it doesn't feel right.
Has to be a willing sacrifice.
Right.
A conscious choice. Yeah.
Right. And again, she doesn't make the conscious choice. She gets tricked into doing it. And she again, they're starting to try to trick her ever since the very beginning, like with the whole maggots in her arm thing and stuff like that. Like, they're just trying to get her to kill herself. And then when she does, like, why wouldn't they have done the same thing with her sister? Why wouldn't her sister already be dead? And why would they let the sister go? Again, that we get nothing that explains why the sister would ever be let go. There's nothing, any kind of redemption or anything. It's just a mess. It's just, the end is just a mess. We get no answers, and the answers that, like, they were leading up to just aren't even followed up on. It just bothers me. It's way too sloppy and open-ended compared to the first two acts. First two acts are great. I think it starts out fantastic. It just ends badly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that for the low point. And we do very differently agree on lore sometimes or not, and sometimes in this case I completely agree. Where was she for the 4 or 5 days, Jess, that she was gone? We don't get any information on that other than maybe she was being held hostage by the Force until someone who was willing to kill themselves came along to set her free. That would make more sense, right?
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, if they're looking for anyone to come in and sacrifice themselves, how many people kill themselves in there all the time?
Right.
That we were led to believe with the whole ribbons and stuff like that people kill themselves, by the dozens every day. I know that's not true, but like the visitor center has a morgue in their basement. So like, obviously they find multiple per day.
Right.
So like, why wouldn't one of those count? Again, they don't know her, it doesn't matter. If accidental suicide works, why wouldn't one of those work?
Right.
Again, it's just very sloppy.
Yeah, I agree. The first two acts were solid. We are on this trip with Sarah, and I do like the fact that we don't necessarily get subtitles for Japanese being spoken because we are in her shoes where we don't know what they're saying. We have to have the translation happen along with us, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think that part was done well. We don't have to know what they're saying. We have to understand what's being translated and the cultural differences that is there. But yeah, I mean, why would a vengeful spirit be going after Sarah? It'd make more sense for it to be Jess.
Right.
So, Jess, it's kind of like Sarah sacrificed herself unwillingly for her sister to live when it's always been the other way around, that she finally had to open her eyes to the truth. And therefore, her sister was able to set free. That doesn't make any sense at the end.
Again, if I just think it would be, you put in one extra scene of her understanding that she has to do this in order to free her sister, and then she does it knowing that. I think makes it a much better and tighter movie.
Yeah. All right, so I'll go first for the number of campfire stories out of 10. I do enjoy this movie. I think it is definitely better than The Burning. I will give it 7.5 campfire stories out of 10. How about you?
I'll agree with you that it's better than The Burning, but not by a whole lot. I'm going to give it 5 campfire stories out of 10. That third act and that ending just really bothers me.
All right. You bring us home with the last movie.
Okay. She Came from the Woods. Came out this year, 2023. Yeah. To be original. So, let's see. It opens up with just a camp.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't think there was any intro other than that. I think it was just a bunch of campers doing camper stuff. We're introduced to there's like a mom who kind of runs the camp. There's a grandpa who kind of owns the camp. They have the mom has 2 sons. One son is like the driver / mechanic. The other son is like, one of the counselors.
Yeah.
And then there's the son's girlfriend, whose name is Lauren, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the son's name was.
Peter.
Peter, there you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then there's them, and then we had a whole bunch of other cast of other counselors that, a lot of them don't matter. Yeah. Very, very soon anyway. So yeah, so there's a bunch of other camp counselors, and they're all like, it's the last day of camp. They have like a little drama play. They have, like a goodbye kind of thing. They pack all the kids up and they're driving them away at night, which is odd, right?
Yes.
Like you'd think that the kids would get picked up, or at least they'd leave in the morning, but no, they leave like at night. Anyway, so all the camp counselors have this tradition at this camp where they all like have like a going away drinking party, like the counselors and everything. So they get drunk and they do like this ritual thing where they like prick themselves with a needle so that they're bleeding, and then they say Agatha. And there's apparently like some old story about the camp to where there was some old nurse that was there and went crazy and, whatever, killed kids or something. And they're trying to like bring her back, kind of like a Bloody Mary type of deal.
Right.
So they do all that, just as they're drinking and having fun. But for whatever reason, this time it actually does something, even though it's implied that this has been happening, because they say that the camp opened in 1945, and this movie takes place in 1987, so it's been like 25 years. So even though they've done this, it's implied they've done this every year since. For whatever reason, this year it worked.
Yes.
Not explained why, but for some reason this year it worked. So of course, when it actually works, as it does in all horror movies, all electronics in cars can no longer work. That's just how it worked. Just magic ghost powers. No electronics or cars can work. So we see the brother's bus that he's delivering all the children with breaks down. He, instead of trying to fix the thing, he just kind of sits there and asks the children to be quiet, which they don't. And then all of a sudden they do. And they're just sitting there very quietly and nicely. So then he gets out to go check the engine. And then as he checks the engine, all the children run into the cornfield and disappear. So he, tries to look for him, can't find him. He runs to the nearest gas station, calls Grandpa, who had left by this point because he didn't, want to stay for the last day of the camp. So he left. So he calls Grandpa, tells him that the bus won't start. All the kids ran away and they were acting weird. He's like, I'll be there immediately. And then he doesn't show up until like way later. But that's what happened. So basically they're having this big party, and there's like, typical camp, drama to where this one boy like has a crush on this one girl. And they're adults, don't get me wrong. They're all like over 18. So it's not like they're children. But so the one guy has a crush on the other camp counselor girl, and it's very much implied that she is also into him.
It's implied that, but it's the hot and cold.
Yeah, I guess. It was but again, it was a very weird scene. I guess it was supposed to be, but it was I guess there's an interesting spin on it, the whole thing. So where she's out like, like trying to skip rocks across the pond, which, she's just throwing like, big heavy rocks and, kaplunk. Like, of course it's not going to skip. But so the guy goes over to like show her how to skip, and then they like tries to lean in for a kiss, and she goes like, ew, I already have a boyfriend, get away from me. To where literally everyone, even her other, like her best female friend, is like, how come you never told me about this other guy? Like, no one had any clue that she was supposedly seeing some other guy. It was a very odd scene. I think it was just the whole, like, turn the trope on its head of, like, women just falling for a guy because they're there, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so they're all kind of just sitting there like, oh, yeah, well, I have this other guy. I like him better. I don't like this guy. Just because he likes me doesn't mean I have to do anything, which is fair.
Yep.
And the guy just picks up one of those heavy rocks she was trying to skip with, walks over, and just hits her in the head with it. And she just dies immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, like, literally everybody's like, oh, she's dead. And then he, like, goes after everybody else, and they're all like, what are you doing? What is happening? Like, did anyone see this coming at all? Like, no, he was so nice. I don't know what's going on. So yeah, the one dude, I don't know, I call him Headband. I don't know what his name is. But he's kind of like...
Was it Mike?
Sure.
I think it was Mike.
He's kind of like I don't really want to call him an alpha male. He's kind of like just the strongest guy by default. Because the guy that tries to be the alpha male is Dylan, and that guy just sucks.
He looks like Machine Gun Kelly.
Oh, yeah. He's got like this bleached blonde mullet. I mean, but he's just like, walking... like unwanted sexual advances again, and mostly he's just like a walking definition of that. Like he's like 30 years old, and he's trying to hit on the girl that just turned 18, and he's basically trying to go after any girl that would have any, like, that seems to be single or not. It's just
right.
Like, that's all he's concerned with.
Right. He reminded me a lot of the bully from It.
Yeah, that's fair. Probably the haircut.
It's the haircut and and like the love switchblades and knives.
Right. Yeah. Fair. So Dylan does not stab the guy. Headband stabs the guy. He has to stab him twice. And they basically just all kind of freak out, and they run back to, like I guess, what do you call it? The
mess
big
hall?
Camp. Yeah. Mess hall, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they all get in there, and they meet the mom, And the mom, they tell the mom what's going on. Like, yeah, the guy freaked out and he killed the girl, and then we killed him. And she's like, oh, I got to call 911. So she goes to call 911, and as soon as they pick up, the phone explodes.
In her ear,
Yeah,
like
in
taking
her
off
ear.
her ear.
And then she has this ridiculous bandage on her ear that sticks out.
A 6 foot,
I
just a
know.
6-inch bandage on her ear.
Like they put like this big huge pad. It looks like you took like a Brillo pad, wrapped it in bandages, and stuck it to the side of her head. The thing is gigantic. Anyway,
Yes.
and it's there for the whole rest of the movie. It never goes away. So she's like, it exploded, but hopefully we'll get some help. But that's the only phone. No one else has a phone. Apparently, no one else even has a cell phone. Well, no, it's 1987. I guess. I guess that would explain that. But yeah, there's no phone, so they can't call for help again. So she's hoping that, well, I did talk to somebody. Maybe they'll hear that something bad happened and they'll come anyway.
Right.
So they all decide, well, we got to go back to see what happened. Like, we have to, one, make sure that the guy is dead, because we don't want him out there like hunting other people. And two, we have to find out there was 2 camp counselors who left the party early to go, like, I guess, turn down the bunks for the camp, because they forgot to do it earlier. Right. So the other group is gonna go look for them. So the one group gets to the beach area. They find the dude. He is, yes, definitely dead. The girl is also definitely dead. We get to see the other 2 counselors turning down the bunks. Like weird things happening with like doors opening and closing, and they get scared or whatever.
Electricity flickering on and off.
Yeah, electricity flickering on and off, and then they're like, okay, yeah, we got to get back. I think at this point when they're outside, that's when they start seeing children running around.
Right.
And they're like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, what's going on with that? And then the children like go into this like section of the woods and start like digging. And then something like comes up out of the ground. And the one counselor can see it because she took part in the ritual like real quick before she left. She like stabbed her finger and said Agatha and then left. But the other counselor didn't do that.
Right.
So the counselor that didn't do that can't see anything. He sees the children, but he doesn't see anything. And the other counselor sees like this ghost nurse come out of the ground.
He's like, what do you see? What do you see?
Right. Yeah. So then they kind of like run back towards the house or whatever. And that's when kind of all hell breaks loose, is when the children start like attacking everybody.
Yeah, like tearing them apart.
Right, yeah, like they're attacking everybody. So they kind of have to like barricade themselves back in the mess hall. And they're trying to figure out what to do. They come up with this plan of like running around the building and then trapping the children in the basement and then locking them in.
Right.
So they go out to go do that. And of course, things don't go as planned. Like,
well,
again,
headband is there saying, hey, I'm the fastest runner. I will go ahead and do that. He gets him in there, and then he starts to go up the stairs, and then Dylan's like, oh, okay, he's not going to make it.
Well, yeah. Well, that part was hilarious. He's not going to make it. He literally kicks him in the face. Like, after he was already clearly, like, feet ahead of the children. Kicks him in the face. He goes down and gets torn apart by children. They lock the door. And at this point, well, actually, before this point, they found the girl counselor, where one of the girl counselors, like, cut up in the woods.
Like, being bled out.
Right, yeah, like being bled out. She had holes, like her tongue was cut out, and like she had holes all over her body, and she just died of blood loss right there. So they know that something bad is going on now. So all hell breaks loose after that, because they don't get the children contained. And then the one guy gets touched by the ghost nurse that's outside. So at this point, they realize that like the ghost nurse is like real,
corporeal, yeah.
Right. And whoever took place in the ritual can see her, and the other people that don't can't. But apparently, she can still interact with them anyway. So basically, they're like trying to fight the children, and run around, scrambling around, and of course, the one kid that was on crutches is the one that wasn't contained. So they're like trying to fight that kid, and then the grandpa shows up with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And shoots at the kid. I guess he was purposely missed, but I was going to say, I don't know how you miss. You're like right next to the kid, but I guess he was not shooting the kid.
Warning shot,
purpose, which I guess makes sense in hindsight. But I was like, just shoot the kid. But I guess that's me. But so, they all kind of go back in the mess hall again. And this is where we get like the actual story of like what happened. is that the grandpa started this camp with the grandma, but the grandma was sick, and so they hired this nurse who said that she could help. And she started, and the grandma started getting more sick. And again, she was dying, and apparently the grandpa, in a a moment of weakness, like boned Agatha the nurse while grandma was on her deathbed.
Yeah, because she said she literally died hours after they boned.
So then she died after that. She buried her. Agatha like dug her up and stole her ring, like trying to like take her place as the grandma.
Yes, she was essentially Kathy Bates's character in Misery.
Right. So like, and the grandpa clearly says at this point that he found out that she purposely like killed the grandma.
Yeah.
Like she purposely was not helping her and was making her worse so that she could take her place. And then he says, so I banished her to the woods.
I banished the...
Right. I was like,
you can walk out.
Yeah, I'm like, one, why the hell are the police not involved? This is 1945. We're not talking like the Wild West here. Like, you could call the police. Like, this is clearly a murder or fraud at the very least. Like, what are you doing? Why would you banish someone to the woods? That doesn't even make sense. So she's apparently like living in the woods, and for years afterwards was like luring children out at night so she could like steal their blood and put it in jars and hang it from trees for some unknown reason. They never say why she's doing that.
Well, no, they said that was her methodology to cure people was bloodletting, essentially.
Right, but why is she putting it in jars and hanging it from trees? Why is she keeping it?
Decorations.
I'm just saying, like bloodletting. I get bloodletting. I know what that was. I'm just saying, like, you don't keep the blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and eventually, like, she stole their daughter, the grandpa's daughter, which is the mom, stole her when she was a kid, and I guess they had a showdown to where they actually killed her and then buried her.
Right.
And somehow this ritual has been going on. And I guess this time it just worked. They never explain why or how it worked this time and it didn't work the other times. It's obviously not the first time it happened.
No, they explain it. It's because Peter found out that they had to give her something to heal, to fix.
Right, but they said they did that every year.
I think the pricking of the fingers is the first time they actually did that.
No, okay. Well, here's the thing, right? This is before he explains what they're doing and why.
Yes.
Okay? So this happened. The girl who is leaving early to go check the bunks, he goes, hey, aren't you going to do the thing? And she goes, okay, fine. She pulls a pin off of her suspenders, pricks her finger and goes, Agatha, and then walks away. She obviously has done this before.
Right.
Okay, because he hasn't explained what they're doing yet. So she's obviously been a part of it, right? So this is not like this is the first time they're doing it. That's why I'm saying, like, they've obviously done this before. Why it works this time is never explained. Nothing is different.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it works this time and it didn't work any other time. Never explained. Whatever. Hold on, where was I getting sidetracked? Okay. So yeah, the one girl was dead out there. And now they decide that they need to like stop her for good. So the mom and the grandpa do the ritual thing too, so that they can now see her.
Right.
And then they decide to basically set up a trap because they know that she wants to come back to get the ring. Like the grandpa wears the ring around his neck and he never takes it off. So she wants this ring. That's why she's coming back, they think. So he's going to set up a trap to where him and the mom are going to sit, in this one area and try to bring her in. And the rest of the people are going to try to figure out a way out. There's a scene where the cop shows up, the actual sheriff shows up. They tell him what's going on. He was obviously a part of this at one time.
He's like, oh no, not again.
Right. So it sounds like he was like a camper with the mom because they seem about the same age.
Yeah, because they said 40. Well, she was 8.
Right.
42 years that she came for the very first time.
Right.
After she was dead.
Right. Yeah. So like, yeah, he tries to leave and his car won't work. He can't call for backup because, of course, magic ghosts know the electronic cars don't start.
Right.
So again, and then there's a pizza guy that shows up. And then the cop takes the pizza guy's car and leaves.
Right. He's like, I'm
never,
not doing this
never
again.
to return. So
I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, him and the pizza guy leave, never to return. Well, I guess Dylan tries to steal the car, but doesn't.
Right.
And at this point, Dylan basically thinks he knows a way out. So he takes the one counselor who didn't do the ritual. This is the one that couldn't see the witch when the kids brought her up from the ground. He brings her to the area where he found the dead girl. So where this is where all the jars of blood are hanging from the trees. And he ties him to the tree and then forces him to do the ritual by like slicing his hand open and forces him to say Agatha, her name. And then like stabs him and then leaves.
Right.
Thinking that now he gave her a sacrifice, so now he's free to go. So he goes back.
So in the heel, yeah.
Right. So he goes back, tries to take the grandpa's car. And then that doesn't work. So then
the kids light him on fire.
Okay, yeah, it was like somebody lights him on fire. Who does it? The children do. The one kid,
Yeah.
the little kid with glasses, comes up and sets him on fire.
Yep.
He rolls around on fire for a while. They come and put him out, and then he's got pretty
one last act of horniness.
Yeah, to where he like he's like I wouldn't say he's near death. He's very injured, but he's obviously still like coherent.
Right.
And yeah, and as he's like lying there dying, he like tries to feel up the one girl that's left. And then she kills him with the fire extinguisher, and everybody's
Ashes
just
his face in.
Yeah, and everybody's just totally fine with that. Like that's that's a shitty thing for him to do, but that's just plain murder. Like
right,
everyone, no one says anything. Like, yeah, the guy was a jerk. Like, yeah, he tried to like grope you. I understand that's bad, but death is that something that's punishable by death? I don't think so. Anyway, so that guy's dead. So then they kind of have like a showdown to where like everybody's got weapons. Like the girl's got like a bow and arrow, which she never uses.
Right,
she just has it. So they're gonna have a showdown, whatever. So Agatha shows up with the grabs the daughter, and then Grandpa has the shotgun, and he goes to shoot her, but he's like, oh, I can't because I might hit my daughter or whatever. So he puts down the shotgun. I can't even remember what the hell happened to her.
Well, they like, hey, tricked her, like, here's the ring, and he gave her a fake ring.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gave her the fake ring, and then she lets go, and then she's like, "Oh, look, that wasn't the real ring; it's a fake ring."
Yep.
And and then I don't know. And then they they stab her.
Stab her with an arrow. She realizes the ring's fake. Grandpa's face gets exploded off by the shotgun because she uses the shotgun.
Right.
Now, the original kid, Peter, that summoned her, did get killed by her by an axe to the throat.
All right.
So he's dead. So it was left. It was just the girlfriend, the brother, the mother, and the grandfather. Grandfather's exploded. And they shoot Agatha through the neck with, an arrow, and she's dead. Her corporeal body is dead because all she really wanted was forever life.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was drunk as shit by this point. Like I was drinking heavily trying to get through this movie. So my apologies. I don't remember how it wrapped up at the end, but yeah.
Yeah. So it ends with that, and saying how are they going to explain this, and then, Deputy Doofus shows up. Look, what happened here? And she's dead body. Was everyone partying with you?
Yeah. Okay. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so movie over. I know this is your first time.
They take up. Well, they take up. They're like, oh, we got to, put her in rocks and put her at the bottom of the lake. Like, oh, we should cut her. We don't want her showing up like the kid at the end of Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
So
well, they actually earlier in the film, they actually made a
Mentioned
reference to the burning as well.
Yes, they did. You've watched too many horror movies. You've seen The Burning way too many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, end of movie.
Yeah, so obviously this is both of us watching it for the first time. You didn't watch it once before, did you? And then watch it again?
No, this is my first time. Why don't you go first with your first thoughts? I know you have probably different thoughts than I do.
Yeah, I thought, I think it does start off as an interesting premise, but it is so fucking sloppy. It is all over the fucking place.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
I mean, it is, I mean, literally, there's like plot threads that go nowhere. There's characters that disappear. I mean, again, nothing is explained. Okay, why is it working this time and it didn't work any other time? Why the hell weren't the police involved? What does banishing her to the woods even mean?
Right.
Why would she do that? Why would she live in the forest? Like, this is a summer camp.
Right.
What does she do for the other 10 months of the year living in the forest? Again, there's so many ridiculous open-ended questions in this movie that I was like, literally, I had to keep drinking to stop asking myself questions. Because I couldn't even watch the movie because I was like, literally, like looking things up. Like, am I missing something? It's like, does this make any sense to anyone else? Like, again, it was all over the place.
That's fair. That's fair. You know, for me, I watched part of it last night and the other part this morning. And I thought, you know, it clearly knew what tropes it was following, right? It blatantly pointed out and said it with Friday the 13th, with the burning. And, you know, when we were picking these movies, I didn't know this burning was even mentioned. So it really shows that we had a good train of thought for this stuff when we're picking this stuff out, right?
And I know you love when movies bring up other movies or bring up other characters, and I fucking hate it. Okay, it is, again, it's just unintentional fucking cheese. Like, again, if you're going to give an homage to something else, just do it. You don't have to tell me about it. You don't have to stroke yourself off, say, "Oh, I'm so great. Look at me. I watched The Burning." Like, dude, who gives a shit? If you're gonna put in an homage, put in the homage. People that know that movie and will get the reference will get it anyway. You don't have to deliberately put it in there. Like, just stupid. I mean, again, I know you love that shit. I can't stand it. It pisses me off. Again, there's another reason why I was drinking heavily watching this movie. I despise that crap.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I can agree with that you can pay the homage. People that know. And they just, you know, lay out the groundwork for it. But I mean, this felt like it did feel like a truly love letter to the 80s camp tropes. So I mean, was I disappointed? Well, I think this was more of like a parody type thing. Yes, absolutely. You know, did it take itself seriously? I felt like it was trying to, but it did come out campy for it.
Here's what I think. I think it was originally written as a kind of pompous, self-serving, you know, version of like, I can do it better with modern stuff. Yeah. And I think halfway through they realized it wasn't good. And so then they did a full 180 and went to parody to make it like funny instead of realizing that they failed to make it serious.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think they had to do a lot of rewrites, which is why, to me, things don't match up at all. Nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, again, I understand there's like, you know, supernatural things at work here, but like nothing is ever explained.
No, it's very, very shady at best. Shaky at best with the lore. I mean, I'll go into my highlights and we can go into your highlights if you happen to have any.
I have a couple, yeah.
I mean, like, do I think the effects were pretty good? I mean, other than the giant bandage, I mean, they're decent for what they were.
I would say, like, when Dylan was burned, that like burned skin that they had was very good. Oh
yeah, like it looked practical, like it looked like it had the bladder effects from the 80s stuff, and I like that because it didn't seem like over CGI and if anything, it seemed like they went down the the practical effects route, and I do enjoy that.
I mean, the head explosion was bad CGI.
But overall, though, like it still was still a good love letter to, let's call it what it is, the Savini effects of the 80s.
No, yeah, like I said, there's some of them that were pretty good. I mean, some of them that were kind of lame. Like when he got to the axe to the neck, that neck wound did not look serious.
It looked like a scratch,
right? It looked like he got hit with an axe, but not chopped with an axe.
Yes.
I was like, that's gonna kill you. I mean, and then the guy was like literally burned, and that skin looked really good.
Yes.
So again, this movie is very inconsistent and all over the place.
Well, I mean, and realistically, like the scumbag, right? He was Glazer. You know what I mean? Having watched these in such short time frame from The Burning, which
he was Glazer, but he goes a step further to like where he's actually willing to murder other people to try to save himself, to where Glazer at least didn't do that. Yeah, he was a walking alpha male sexual assault waiting to happen, but he wasn't gonna kill other people.
Right. So I mean, and I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the homage, the love letter that is there, and I do like the fact that we have stuff now. You know, is it jumping on the nostalgia train a little bit? Yeah, there's no question about that. Everyone loves the 80s still to this point. But I mean, the acting is exactly what you expect the acting to be. Like as we discussed earlier with The Burning, it's the idea of the up and comer actors to this, and it had that same feel to it for that movie. And like I said, you know, could they have been done better with the lore? Absolutely. Does the banishment need to be there? Explain what banishment actually was, because banishment in, you know, the Vivitch or the Witch, completely different than it was in the 40s.
Well, yeah, but again, what did they get banishment for? You know, saying things that were unpleasant to other people. Okay, yeah, right. I can see that being banishment. Yeah. Murdering a woman is not a banishment offense in 1945. That is called the police, go to jail. Why they wouldn't go to, it doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense at all.
Right.
I don't get that. Like, that whole thing is like, that's so beyond making sense to me. Like, what the hell is the point of this? The whole curse was stupid as shit. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Right. So why don't we go into your highlights?
Okay. The unexpected attack with the rock against that girl was hilarious. It was shocking to me. I was like, whoa, I did not expect that at all. That was just, it came out of left field. I laughed out loud. It was, again, just, it was done well. It was done definitely like you did not expect that. You did not see that coming at that time. Two is they had like that when Grandpa was telling the backstory of what happened with Agatha and his wife and everything. There was like this cool kind of silhouette storytelling, like shadow puppets kind of storytelling. Yeah. I thought that was really well done. It was very interesting the way that they did that. I'm sure it was just all CGI and shit, but it looked good and it looked interesting, and it was, you know, it got the point across, and it did well for a flashback. Instead of just having a generic flashback sequence, I thought that was interesting and fun.
Yeah.
The other thing I liked was the actual end credits. Yes. Actually, end credits were actually done really well. It was like kind of like almost like you were in like a video game kind of, you know, with like all of the like cast members and crew members and everything. It actually had like Polaroids of them as children. And I thought it was interesting. I thought it was fun. I thought it was all that. I'm not gonna say the ending is actually on the other side. You want me to go into my lows now?
Yeah.
Lows. Yeah, I'll start off with that one. I thought the ending was terrible. It was horrible. The stupid, like, you know, they have like this event where Grandpa literally gets murdered in front of them, and then this like doofus cop shows up, and it's like, you know, I'm surprised they didn't have his own little theme song playing in the background. Like, it was,
the cops from Halloween 5,
right? Like, I'm surprised they didn't have that. It was just like all these like stupid jokes at the very end of this movie. Like, these people should be fucking traumatized.
Yes.
All of this murder and death and family members killed. Like, literally, the woman, her son and her father just died in front of her.
Right.
And she can like just roll her eyes and make fucking jokes about, of course we're not okay. Like, what the fuck is wrong with this movie? Like, it's all over the place. It was just, the ending was so fucking stupid. I hated it. One was the 80s style was not done well at all. It was like a neo 80s. It was like the people that try to revive 80s now, that's what they were dressed like. They weren't dressed like real 80s people at all. Like, all of the girls' hair was modern hairstyles. They didn't even, I mean, they had a couple of like, you know, side ponytails in there, but all of the other hairstyles were all like modern hairstyles. Like Dylan's mullet, it was a modern day mullet. That was not an 80s mullet.
Yeah.
Like all of their clothes and stuff, again, it's like 80s revival clothes, not actual 80s clothes. It was, I thought, again, it's like to try to set your stuff in 1987, like at least try to, you know, play the part.
Right.
Okay, when the pizza guy shows up, of course, he's the typical trope stoner pizza guy, right? With like literal smoke coming out of the windows when he shows up. And then it has pizza time. Did you catch the number on the pizza time sign?
Was it 420?
420-6969 was the number of the pizza place. I'm like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, again, it's these, you know, weed head people that think this shit is fucking hilarious. And again, it's the same bullshit. Every time there's any kind of weed humor and everything, it's the same dumb bullshit that you have to be high to think is funny.
Right.
Okay, again, children are not a threat. I don't care if there's 20 children. If I have a bat, I could easily defeat 20 children. I'm sorry. If you are a male that's not like literally like injured or crippled to the point of being unable to fight, you know, in any way whatsoever, you could easily take out 20 children. They are not tough. They didn't have weapons. They're using their bare hands. Even if they're biting you with their teeth, you could easily punch them and knock them out in one hit. And he had a bat.
Yes.
You're telling me that, again, at first, I understand you don't want to hurt the children. But if the children are going to kill you, you're allowed to fight back. And I don't, the children are not a threat to me. Like, I understand, like, you know, oh, it's freaky that children go bad. Sure. You know, like in Pet Sematary, it was freaky, but the kid had a scalpel. Right? The kid had a scalpel and was cutting, like, Achilles' heels. Like, he wasn't, like, a genuine threat against in a one-on-one fight. You know what I mean? He was using sneaky surprise tactics in his small size to get an advantage. These children were just straight up trying to brawl with adults. Like, you could go outside and easily subdue all of those children and tie them up in like less than 5 minutes. Again, that whole children as a threat thing was just dumb as shit to me. To that whole story where, again, you murdered my wife. And one, I'm going to continue the camp and talk about how much I love my wife, even though I literally was only with her for a year. This is 25 years later, and I'm still talking about, you know, how this great camp that we had all these visions for. Like, dude, you were literally only there for not even an entire year, and your wife was on her deathbed the whole time. And two, like, she murdered your wife. Like you said, you had proof. You found out the horrible truth of what she was doing, which obviously meant he found proof of how she did it. Why wouldn't you call the police? Obviously, the police can get there because 2 different police show up in this movie. It's not like you're in the middle of nowhere where police can't get to or something or whatever. Again, very clearly could have called the police, could have gotten her arrested. Instead, banish her to the forest where you let her prey on children for years before you finally did something about it, and only because it was your own child that was being threatened. What about all the other kids that she's hurt over the years? You don't care about them?
Right.
Yeah, this is so ridiculous, so like nonsensical with all this kind of stuff. And then they finally kill her and they bury her on the property. And this curse is never explained. I don't know why that would make any sense to where, the nurse sees blood and she comes back to life. Okay. If this is the first year you're doing that ritual, that would make sense to me. Again, we're shown with the counselors, this is not the first time they've done it. Why does it work this time? Never explained that they did anything different this time than they've done every other year. Again, none of that stuff is explained. This whole curse is never explained. Why does she come back? Why is she able to control children? Again, when they talked about her before, she had to convince the children. She had to coax the children into going outside. When they showed the girl being threatened, the mom when she was a child, she was fearing for her life. She was not under mind control. Why does she have mind control powers now? Never explained. Like, none of, again, it's just, they just threw a whole bunch of crap into a pot, and they just didn't try to make sense out of any of it. And then, of course, they add all this cheesy crap on top of it. They're like, oh, look, we're funny. We're calling back old horror movies because we're pretending like we're 1987. That's great. If you're a fan of all this stupid, cheesy crap, I'm sure you think this is great. I hated it. Just hated it. I mean, of course, I hated Dylan, too, because he's just a terrible, terrible, bad person. But I think I hated the whole Agatha quote unquote curse more than I hated Dylan, and I hated Dylan a lot because it is just stupid. It didn't make any sense. Rant over.
I mean, obviously, as a purveyor of cheese, I enjoyed this movie. I mean, yeah, there's you're correct. The lore, everything there, definitely needed. And as you said, it is like they gave up halfway through the movie and go, all right, parody time, go. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the little points. And fun fact, that guy Danny that bashed the head in, he wrote and directed this movie.
Yeah.
That's his. So it's this is, and as you saw, it was based off of a campfire story they actually told each other, the Bloomquist brothers. So they had this story in their head as a kid, probably growing up watching the same movies we did, and this is what they came up with. They're like,
and that's pretty sad. If they've been telling each other that story since they were children, and that's the best they could come up with for a backstory. Okay. You need to percolate that a little further there, buddy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it was a short story. It was something they told each other forever. And I think they're trying to be like the Duffer Brothers at this point in time.
I'm sure.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I didn't have to drink at all watching this movie because I love the cheesiness. I love the campiness. And you're correct on their styles. Yeah, did Lauren have the Claire's heart earrings? Yes, that was definitely a thing in the 80s.
I mean, I lived the 80s, man. I know what the 80s sound looked like. And again, they were trying, but again, they were going for the neo 80s. They didn't try to get any vintage stuff. Like, this is all remake stuff that was remaked in modern styles with 80s, patterns or whatever it is.
The Target 80s section.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like, even like, again, the hair, like, what was that girl's name? V, the one that just turned 18.
Yeah.
Very obviously had the typical, like, modern influencer hair and makeup.
Yeah. Like the Dario's.
Right.
Style.
Right. Like, she very much looked like she was just not even attempting. Like, she came from the modern day and went back there. Like, didn't even attempt to change her style in any way whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. So with all your low points, stuff like that, how many campfire stories out of 10 do you give this movie?
I did not like this movie, and I don't think you're surprised to hear that. I will give it 2 campfire stories out of 10.
Wow. So you're saying that you could easily just baseball a bat everyone to death and been fine.
Children, yeah, I'm not afraid of children. Okay, like they didn't. If they're like supernatural children, or if they're children that like surprise attack you, yes, totally get it. These are just children that they know are dangerous and going in a straight up brawl with evil children. I'm not afraid of children.
Well, I mean, he did hit one kid with a bat, dropped it.
Yeah, and then felt bad about hitting the children with a bat. Like, okay, I get that you feel bad about hitting kids with a bat. I understand that. But you can easily, like, again, how many adults were there at that point?
Well, first off, I think there's only 20 kids altogether.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there was
only
them
were gone.
Yeah, it was the kids that were on that bus, and there was like maybe 10, 12 kids.
and there's like 10 adults.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, you could easily go outside and just grab their hands and hold them down and tie them up. It's not hard. I don't see children as a threat in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when movies like this exist, for us, we tend to go opposite directions because you're not the purveyor of cheese that I am. It's not as good as The Force. I will not give it that. I mean, is it a fun movie to watch once? I think so. And do I think it's better than? It's different than The Burning, right? It is a completely different vein. And for that, I'm going to give it the same score of 6. Am I glad I watched it? Absolutely. Is it something I'm going to watch consistently? No, it's probably a one and done thing for me. Even though this is cheesy campy goodness. So 6 campfire stories out of 10 for me.
All right. Anything else you want to say before we do the outro? All right.
No.
Okay, we want to suck your blood. Vampires were stuff of legends starting with Vlad the Impaler, but it was not long before they became a trope in all of media. Is there a new resurgence of good vampire movies? Join us next time as we don't drink wine and see if these vampire movies suck. Remember, we watch bad movies so you don't have to.
And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh. Good night.